The James Harden trade is now officially complete and has been announced by the NBA, making it set in stone that James Harden is no longer a member of the 76ers, and the Sixers have brought in their new crew of characters to help improve the team. I've talked a lot about this from different angles, the reason that the trade went down, what the biggest takeaways are for the Sixers and for the Clippers, but there's one guy who I believe has not gotten enough of the conversation yet. Now, before I dive into specifically what I believe about KJ Martin and why I think he is so important in this deal, I do want to make sure that you guys are hitting that subscribe button. That at this point in time, 81.7% of you guys watching these videos have not subscribed to the channel just yet. We have a ton of big plans for the upcoming season. I'm excited to get fully on the train and bought into this Sixers team now that the James Harden saga is over. No longer a part-time TMZ reporter, part-time Sixers reporter, full-time locked in on the Sixers and what they can do on the basketball court from here on out, as well as I'm sure there will still be plenty of trade rumors that will continue based on the collection of assets that the Sixers did bring back. And let's begin this video by diving into that specifically. So we know that the trade is officially announced now. The Clippers are getting James Harden, PJ Tucker, and Filip Petrusev. That was a slight change in this. But the Sixers bringing back Nicholas Batum, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, KJ Martin, and draft picks. The draft picks, I do believe, are the cream of the crop of this trade, but KJ Martin is the guy that I want to begin with and discuss today. So it has been officially announced that he is now with the Sixers, and we have the Welcome to Philly tweet from the Philadelphia 76ers official account. And I'll begin by a little brief intro of KJ Martin. 23-year-old kid, former second-round pick, had a little bit of an interesting path to the NBA that he did not go to college. Instead, he took a one-year post-high school to go to IMG Academy and have kind of a prep year. He was a second-round pick, late second. He's played his first 3 seasons with the Rockets before being traded to the Clippers this offseason for a pair of second-round picks. He was a guy that caught the attention of the Rockets and was one of their prized young guys. And to look at his stats here, the Rockets obviously a young team early in their developmental path, but that in his first season, averaging 9.3 points, 5.4 rebounds, 1.1 assists in his 23.7 minutes per game, saw his opportunities slip a little bit in year 2, his minutes going from 23.7 to 21.0. As a result, his stats slipped slightly as well, averaged 8.8 points, 3.8 rebounds, 1.3 assists. And then in 2022-2023, so last season, was when he kind of took a stride forward, started 49 of the 82 possible games, saw his minutes per game grow to 28, and those stats followed as well. He averaged 12.7 points per game, 5.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. Still needs to take some strides in shooting. It was his poorest shooting season last year as he shot just 31.5% from 3. Through his career thus far, he's a 33.8% three-point shooter, and he has not gotten a true opportunity with the Clippers, nor did he before the trade. But he was a guy that was a key piece of this Rockets future, a guy that they regarded or seemingly regarded very highly before having to trade him. I know Clippers fans were quite excited when he was traded to Los Angeles, and the number one reason why that is because of his athleticism. This guy really does have rim-rocking, game-changing athleticism. And to give you a little taste of that, I'll show this video here.
Into the lane, to the rim, and he just punched it in Turner. He just got one of the league's best.
Consistent, but look at this, KJ Martin on your head. My goodness, that's a Miles Turner poster. Welcome to the KJ Martin Dunk Show.
That is the type of game-changing and high-level athlete he is. He does have the verticality, and there's also a lateral and just downhill ability that he has. That sometimes when we look at a lot of these athletes, a guy that kind of jumps to my mind as I make this comparison is Derrick Jones Jr. Derrick Jones Jr. is a guy that I believe is very vertically talented, can get up, catch just about any lob, throw down crazy dunks, but he doesn't necessarily have that explosiveness. With KJ Martin, I think it's a nice combo of the explosiveness, the power, and the speed, that he does have it all when it comes to athleticism, and we see evidence by that in that dunk. Miles Turner truly is one of the better rim protectors across the NBA, and he just went and put it on his head there. That is what you're getting with KJ Martin. Now, I don't want to set the expectations too high for Martin. I do believe that he is going to struggle a little bit to get minutes. To take a look at the Sixers rotation and the depth chart as it currently stands, this all kind of taking guesses. We have not seen how this team looks on the floor yet, and I think Nick Nurse will probably experiment to see, but just kind of a peek. The projected starters according to NBA World here, we got Tyrese Maxey at point guard, D'Anthony Melton at shooting guard, Tobias Harris at small forward, Robert Covington at power forward, and Joel Embiid at center. Then looking at the bench, there's Patrick Beverley, there's Kelly Oubre, who I think have both earned a stable spot in the rotation. Nicholas Batum, I do think is going to play quite a bit. Then beyond that, we have KJ Martin, Marcus Morris Sr., Paul Reed, and Mo Bamba. That is a deep team, and that makes it difficult for KJ Martin to get on the floor. But that is a strong point in why the Sixers are better suited to compete and win this season than they have been in years past. That I think you can make real arguments. A guy like Marcus Morris Jr., senior, who is at the tail end of his career, he is probably the 10th or 11th man on this team, and he very well would have been a 6th or 7th man in years past. That is proof of how deep this team is and how much better the bench depth has gotten on the Sixers roster. But to speak to KJ Martin specifically and why I'm excited, I'll start with in this deal, once again, looking at the trade that comes back here. Nicholas Batum, Marcus Morris, and Robert Covington. Covington is the youngest guy coming back in that trade, and he is 32 years old. We remember him fondly from his days of the process here in Philly. He posted a cool picture saying, like, coming back where it started, him and Embiid. So I'm very excited about that. He's a guy Embiid holds in very high light as a teammate and friend, so it is good to see them reunited. But at 32 years old, Covington is the youngest piece in that deal, compared to Batum, who is going to retire at the conclusion of the season, and Marcus Morris Sr., who is notably taking a step back in terms of his ability to move on the floor. So I think he is closing down on his years in the NBA as well. But not KJ Martin. KJ Martin, 23 years old, that he is still in the early process of his developmental stages. But I would like to note that he is on a one-year deal as well. That was very clearly one of Daryl Morey's goals, to make sure they're not eating to this cap space, this future cap space beyond this season in a deal, so they can attack the free agency market and star hunt in the way that he desires. KJ Martin, that means he will also be a free agent, but I do believe that if he proves himself and shows why he deserves a long-term role, he will absolutely get it. That this Sixers team could use some more young pieces to begin building around, and if KJ Martin can prove to be that guy, he absolutely has a long-term spot. That yes, Tyrese Maxey is already taking these massive leaps. There's been some intriguing flashes from Jaden Springer. Paul Reed is who he is, and we love him for who he is. But the bottom line is, beyond that, there's really not that much as far as young talent and expectations. And yes, it is nice that the Sixers recoup these draft picks and kind of restock the assets moving forward, but it is much more likely that those draft picks are flipped for a star, a win-now piece, than adding young talent to keep the long-term success of the Sixers. So that is why I believe KJ Martin is so valuable. Now, to dive into specifically why I think he will stand out, I want to give a shout out to Mr. Crockpot of the Panty Line, or of Edge of Philly Sports at this point. He said 2 things KJ Martin is going to bring to the Sixers roster: elite weak side defender, 1.5 blocks per 100 possessions, and number 2, excellent off-ball mover. Thrives when cutting and diving. Expect Joel Embiid is going to find this dude cutting to the basket for many, many highlight reel dunks. So the highlight reel dunks are exciting, but I do think the cutting is the most notable part for it. That oftentimes when we see these kind of athletic archetype of players, they tend to rely too heavily on their athleticism to purely get them through. I don't feel that way about KJ Martin, that he does seem to have good instincts for where to be, how to get to the basket, when to cut to the lane, and his just instincts and ability as a cutter is going to be crucial in this Nick Nurse offense. That through the first 3 games of the season already, we've seen so much more movement, so much more cutting, and so much more team-friendly basketball. That is what KJ Martin can play a part of, and if he can prove to excel as a cutter, that is probably his gateway to getting minutes on the floor. That as we roll out this, old crew of rotation players, if Marcus Morris is not cutting to the basket sharp in the way that Nick Nurse desires, that is where I could see KJ Martin getting the opportunity. And I do believe he's a guy who's hungry for it, who wants to prove it, and I just believe in his long-term potential, that I think this is a guy who has all the tools and has shown flashes of being able to put it together. So I think this is much more than just a throw-in piece to the deal, that this is a guy these Sixers fans should have their eyes on and keep an eye out for what he could potentially turn into. I know Jaden Springer, I mentioned that we've seen the flashes with them. I see a lot of similarities in the Springer and KJ Martin game. I believe in KJ Martin offensively more than I do in Springer, and Springer's shown flashes and is developing as well. It should be noted that KJ Martin's 2 years older than Springer, so he should be further in the progression at this point in time, but it's exciting that we're seeing that is the ability that he is showing, and that is an intriguing young piece that the Sixers now have their hands on. So as we now bury the lead that the James Harden deal is now in the past, the roster is what it is, that I think KJ Martin should be a sign of life for a Sixers fan and a flash of youth that should be exciting to all. This roster specifically, and I'm going to pull it up as the depth chart again right here, there is more athleticism on this roster than we've seen in any Sixers team during the Joel Embiid era. That so many of these guys are able to do more than one things. There's not just stationary shooters. There's not just guys who need the ball in their hands. These are a wide variety of basketball players who can all make an impact in different ways. That's very exciting to me, and why it's especially as exciting is because there's a head coach like Nick Nurse who's shown the ability to pull the right strings, make the right decisions, and make changes on the fly based on what a game will dictate. That has not been the experience under Doc Rivers in the past 3 years, who kind of had the same script day after day, game after game, no matter how the ebbs and flows of the game were deciding. So the fact that Nick Nurse has this array of weapons and has these different abilities or different options that he can go to is very exciting to me. So I don't know how much KJ Martin is going to fit into that rotation in the short term, but I do think he's a guy that will be hungry for the opportunity and has the raw tools to capitalize when he gets it. For now, we will keep an eye out. We will see what that be. There is no full official update on when these guys will be integrated into the Sixers roster and when we'll get our first view of them on the floor. But I cannot wait to see that myself. I'm sure I'll be reporting right back here and letting you know my thoughts on how they look and the early results of that. So stay posted for that. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, ringing that bell so you're not missing out on any content on this channel. And I'll be back with talking with you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.